Hi, this is Mr. Wigdahl with a lesson on fractions, decimals, and percents. Fractions, decimals, and percents are all very connected. They are all ways of showing less than one. If you take one whole thing, like maybe one whole pumpkin pie, and divide it into parts, you could say that those parts are fractions, you could say that those parts are decimals, or you could say that those parts are percents. And let me show you how with a little picture here. Let's start with a circle that's been cut in half. Okay, there you have it. And let's say that it was let's just say it's a pumpkin pie. Might as well. And you got half the pumpkin pie left. I think that we can all agree that this is a fraction, right? And that fraction is fairly simple. That is 1/2 of the pie. Now, to change that into a decimal or a percent, we're going to want to work in hundredths, not halves. So we need to take an equivalent fraction of this half. And so what we'll do is we'll turn it into hundredths, like this. And as you know, to make an equivalent fraction, we multiply across the denominators and numerators with the same number and get our equivalent fraction. So 2 times what equals 100? 2 times 50. Do the same thing on top. 1 times 50 is 50. So our fraction representation of this drawing of a pumpkin pie is 50 hundredths. Okay? And I might write it like this. 50 hundredths. That DTHS is one of the hardest things to say. Hundredths. So that's our fraction representation. Now, once we have it into hundredths, it becomes very easy to make it into a decimal or a percent. A decimal, as you probably know, starts with a point like this. Everything on this side of the decimal is going to be more than 1. Everything on this side of the decimal is going to be less than 1. And so if we have 50 hundredths, we have a 5 here and a 0 here. This means 50 hundredths because this 5 is in the tenths place and the 0 is in the hundredths place. So it's read as 50 hundredths. Now this and this are equal, and then we just have to write it as a percent. And as a percent, it's just 50%. The word percent means per 100. 50 per 100. 50 out of 100. 50 hundredths. 50 hundredths. So this fraction is equal to this decimal is equal to this percent. Decimals are a very useful way of showing parts of a whole or less than one, but they follow some very specific rules. You probably know how to make a decimal point. It looks a lot like a period or a spot, and so you know that's always going to be involved with a decimal. The numbers that go to the left of a decimal, I'll just do 3 of them, 3 place values, are going to be more than 1. And you know that here you have your ones and your tens and your hundreds. You might know that. So this is going to be written as, you have your ones, you have your tens. It's hard to squeeze it in here. Hundreds. Yeah, got it. Hundreds, tens, and ones, right? Now when you go to the right of a decimal point, that's where it gets interesting, because directly to the right is actually your tenths. That's a fraction of 1. One more place value to the right and you have your hundredths, and one more place value to the right and you get thousandths. So you got tenths. I'm going to write these big because you won't be able to see them. These are tenths. Then you have hundredths. And then you have thousandths. I do not know why they name these with such hard things to say, but that's what it is. Up here you got your thousandths. So if I took a number, and if I put some numbers in here, just to kind of make it interesting, I put a 4, 5, 2, 8, I'm making this up as I go, 1, 3. This would be read as 452. That part you probably already know how to do. But then we have 813 thousandths. So that's how decimals work. Now I want to show you how to compare some decimals, fractions, decimals, and percents using a tool called a centowheel. This right here is a tool we call a centowheel. Centowheel spelled like this, centowheel. And it's a very specific tool. It's really only good for one thing, and that's measuring hundredths of pie charts. You can see over here I have a pie chart. Now you understand why I put a pumpkin pie in the picture. A pie chart is a round circle with different pieces of the pie cut out to show different amounts. There's a certain amount of purple here, a certain amount of, what do you call that, indigo, a certain amount of light blue, and a certain amount of teal, or whatever these colors are. Different fractions of this whole circle are colored into 4 different colors. So I can use this centowheel to actually figure out how many hundredths of the whole circle are colored in. It's called a centowheel. If you know some of your Greek and Latin roots, you would know that centa means 100, like a century has 100 years. And I guess it's just called a centowheel because it's round. So we take our centowheel, which I gotta grab, and we put it right on top of our pie chart, like this. And if we placed it carefully, we can use these little marks around the edge, we call them tick marks, to count about how many tick marks worth of the wheel are colored in. So if you take a look, let's start with the purple, that's the big one. These long lines going across are tenths. There's 10 of those. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're all cut in half, so then you got 20 of those. And then each one of these little tick marks divides this whole centowheel into 100 parts, or hundredths, or decimals or percents, but I'll show you that in just a minute. So just taking the purple starts here and goes to here. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 1, 2, 3, 43 purple. I think you can all agree that's purple. Now I gotta figure out what these other colors are. Whatever you call this one, I'm gonna call it teal. Starts here, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 teal, or turquoise maybe would be better. Then we have, oh, it tells me on here, this is called sky. Sky starts here, and we got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 25 sky, and this last one is called orchid, I guess. And you see orchid starts here. We got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 orchid as well. 25. This color they call orchid. Oh, that D doesn't look too good, does it? So there we go. And guess what number we're going to get if we add these all up? 3 plus 7 is 10, plus 5 is 15, plus 5 is 20. Put down the 0, carry the 2. 2 plus 4 is 6. 8, 10. You guessed it, 100 to go all the way around. So now, by using our centowheel and our colored in pie chart, we can very easily make some fractions, decimals, and percents. If I said, what fraction is purple, you could tell me it's 43 hundredths, Mr. W. Easy. If I said, what's that decimal? You'd say, well, here's my decimal point, 43 hundredths. If I said, what percentage of that pie is colored purple? You would tell me 43%. Okay? And the same thing would work for any of the other colors. If you said, what do you want me to, let's do sky. 25. So it's 25 out of 100 is colored sky. Sky's this one. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. What's the decimal? 25 hundredths. What's the percent? 25%. So just to review, if I was going to take fractions, decimals, and percents and fill them into a chart where I was putting equal numbers for all, but using these different ways of writing parts of a whole, it might look something like this. Let's say I had a rectangle and it was colored in this much, okay? What you have here is 4 parts, so I know 4 is my denominator, and how many are colored in? 3, so my fraction is 3/4. Would look like this. Then what we say is, so that's my fraction, then we say, how do we turn that fraction into hundredths? And you know that's just a simple equivalent fraction, or maybe if you happen to have a picture of a pie chart and a centowheel handy, you could just do it that way. But for what I'm doing here, I'm going to just make an equivalent fraction. How many 4s are in 100? Well, I just happen to always remember that there's 4 quarters in $1, and a quarter's 25 cents, so it's 4 times 25. So I do the same thing on top, 3 times 25. 3 25s or 3 quarters is 75 cents or 75. That's just how I remember it. 75 hundredths goes in this one, 75 hundredths. Then if you take that, and since it's already out of hundredths, I get my decimal point in place, and I know there's going to be 2 digits because it's tenths and hundredths. 75 hundredths. And then to convert that to a percent or a percent out of 100, it's just 75 out of 100. Just as we've said here, 75 out of 100. This is 75 hundredths. Whoops. I don't know if I have an eraser. Where's my eraser? There we go. 75 hundredths and 75%. All right, thanks for watching. Fractions, decimals, and percents. Have a great day.